So this lesson is about the history of tobacco use. It is for 10th graders for 50 minutes. It is one of two, and the subject is world history. And in my group, there is Travis, Mike, and myself. So for our central focus of unit, the literacy strategy focus is to identify the growth of tobacco in different parts of the world. And we chose this specifically because later on for our language function, we chose identify. So we wanted to make sure that that was up here as well. We didn't add any related skills. And for content focus, it is the social, economic, and political effects of the growth of tobacco in Europe and the Americas. And for our standards, we just have three to kind of cover our bases. So we have the literacy standard, the history social science, and an ELD standard. So we made note to cross this out because we will not be mentioning any of that. So for our objectives, we bolded the language function that we want students to be able to do. So the first one is to describe the growth of the tobacco industry from the introduction of tobacco into Europe until the present. And the assessment of that will be formal, and it'll consist of filling out a tobacco timeline and a graphic organizer. The next one is to identify the ways in which tobacco has been used in different time periods and cultures, and that'll also be a formal assessment in a group poster. And the last one will be to compare their views of tobacco through an economic and historical lens, and that is informal through a pair-share discussion. As I mentioned before, the language function we chose is identify. So some of the vocabulary words that they'll need to know is cultivation, commercial, industry, and indigenous. And our discourse will be a class discussion, a written timeline, and a collaborative poster. We will be needing the graphic organizer that they provide, the history of tobacco handout, the websites, markers, poster boards, laptops or Chromebooks, and a PowerPoint presentation, which they'll be making on those laptops. The prior knowledge is that students know how to use different websites to find information about a subject, and they're familiar with tobacco from ads and around their neighborhood. So in our previous class, we are assuming that we had a previous class and we finished the section on new imperialism. So we're going to finish the unit by thinking about studying something that's common today to further understand the effects of imperialism and a global economy. We will ask students both general and historical questions about tobacco and provide images to go along with the lesson. Our hook or purpose for learning will be to post an image of a cigarette on the screen, and we will ask the students to identify where in the world tobacco became prevalent and what group of people began using it first. And we will explain what that tobacco was a popular commodity in the Americas and was introduced to Europe after Columbus exported it in the late 1400s. Our focused instruction will consist of us, the teacher, handing out asking students a number of discussion questions about the history, public opinion, the purpose. We will also hand out a timeline and the organizer with focus questions to help make it a little bit easier. And we will make it clear on how students will be required to research and answer questions by modeling sample questions on the board. For differentiation and scaffolding, we will call on individual students using equity cards. We will ask more open-ended questions to English learners and IEP students to serve as scaffolds for class participation, and deeper analysis questions for accelerated learners. For our guided instruction or practice, we will have groups of 4 or 5, and we will give them a section to focus on for their internet research activity, and they will research and answer questions on the organizer. The history of tobacco reading is pretty long, so we decided to do a jigsaw so that they will be able to focus on specific parts and share it with each other. And based on everything they find, they will fill out the tobacco timeline. Again, for our differentiation and scaffolding, students with disabilities and English learners will be given specific questions rather than just coming up with their own facts. And the English learner students can take their work home if they are not completed. For independent practice, students will present their research to the class, and we will call individual students from each group, also using equity cards. And the students will use a poster to create a visual timeline to share with the class. And our differentiation is that students, we will provide EL students with links to be able to locate the answers. To close out this activity, we will check in with students to see how far they got, and students will turn in their graphic organizers and poster timelines as exit steps.